Welcome to the ASQ Podcast, where life transitions become your greatest teachers. Have you ever looked around and realized you built this life, but it no longer fits? Maybe nothing's wrong on the outside, but inside, something's shifting. This week, we explore what happens when your soul outgrows your circumstances and how to navigate the discomfort of outgrowing the very life you worked so hard to create. Stay tuned. How you doing?
Good. Thank you for another great episode. I mean, I feel like we're getting into some really great topics as of late, and we'd like to just continue that trajectory. Yeah.
I think the topics that we have coming up are really in alignment with a lot of the things that we've been going through most recently.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about stuff that we go through all the time, but most recently.
Yeah, and the cool thing is just it shows like the evolution of ideas and evolution of how you do things, because things always change.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Yep. So what do we got today?
So today we're talking about what we do or what do we need to do when the dreams we once chased now feel like a cage or a prison. I like prison better, but a cage is good too. You know what it reminds me of is Alicia Keys, the bird. The
right now I feel like a bird.
Yeah.
Cage without a key.
Ooh, let's let her sing that one.
Everyone comes, stares at me.
Okay.
They don't know how I feel inside. Sorry, go ahead. I love that's a great song
that goes right with
into this. Yeah.
So shout out to Alicia Keys.
Of
Maybe
course.
she'll watch us, right?
Yeah,
so
we'll see.
anyways, so I want to start with talking about that a little bit. And then I want to read a quote that I have.
Sure.
And so the reason that I think I'm the one that developed this episode was because I have been really struggling lately with that thought of transitioning into a different stage in my life and being, 52 and doing that right now, right? Which is a really a common thing for people. I think it's really common. I think it's something that people go through and they are scared because they don't know what that looks like.
Yeah.
And so,
well, it's a very interesting stage, right? Because what you're, when you're looking at that, what you're mentioning, that age group it's what is life like considering that I may die at any moment.
yeah.
So there's a fear of finality that comes with that.
Yeah.
And then also there's a fear of meaning when it comes to that, right? Because a lot of people in this age, the kids start leaving the house and things just begin to change. So you build a life based on a purpose that served up to this particular moment. So then now what?
Right.
Exactly. And the fear of the inevitable, right? Kind of like begins to creep in a lot more,
Exactly. And a fear of this is all I've known. And now I have to switch into something else. And so I think the hard part for some people is that, so there's a couple of stages that you go through to get to that.
From your point of view, let's talk about you. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
Because
I think let me start with a quote. Let me start with this quote.
Yes.
Okay. Let me do that because I want to do that before I forget.
Yeah.
Because this is going to definitely go into what I'm going to talk about. So the episode quote is, sometimes the life we built was perfect for who we were, not for who we're becoming.
Yeah.
And so from my perspective, that's why I wanted to read that quote, because this is exactly where I'm going, is like, for the longest time up until just recently, I thought that my life was going to be, I had it etched out, like sketched out, right? I had this idea of what my life was going to be like, what I was going to do, how much money I was going to make, how I was going to look while I was doing it. And, I think what I was feeling a lot of was this just unsettling, like, feelings, like those voices inside, the whispers that we talk about, right? And I was able to calm those things down, right? Like kind of just like fan the fire out, fan the flames, right? But as I did that, what happened is that those things got bigger and bigger to the point where it was becoming an uncontrollable feeling of just uncomfortable.
Yeah,
right?
It's disorienting.
Very disorienting. And really that disorientation, it leads you to do a lot of things that you don't think that you're going to feel or think of, right? And you either invite those things to come out, which I did not do initially, and you try to suppress it for as long as you can until you just can't and you fucking lose your mind, right? And then, or you just accept it and you just go with it and you go with the uncomfortability. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And I think for me, I, up until just recently, got to the point where I was suppressing it very well, but I would have episodes and you were just like, yo, what is going on with you? Like, what's happening? Something's not right. And I'd be like, oh, it's fine. It's fine. And then, we have a talk and we powwow it out and we're good. And then a couple months later it would come up again. And those were the things that were happening for me that I had to really step back and go, oh, okay, something's got to give here. I'm not okay. In this form, I'm not okay. And allow myself to take everything that I was feeling in and consider it to now go through the transformation. I'm still going through this transformation, right? So that kind of just in a nutshell, to be really succinct, is what I was feeling.
The thing is that in all the research studying the educare, which is like the bringing out from within me, right? Like that situation right there, it's really kind of like the call or the invitation to do the sacred psycho-spiritual work, right? Because what you're doing is, and this is kind of like what happened, right? Like society has a template for success, right?
Yes.
It has a template. You pick a career, you work in that career so that you could retire, right? You have a family, you raise that family, you raise it to the best of your capabilities, right? But then you're retired, right? So we have these templates that we follow, right? And again, it's like it's easier to condemn society. It's easy to criticize it. It's very easy because if we have the tendency to always have to find someone to blame, right? But society is our best attempt. And I said this before, and I'm going to keep repeating it. It is our best attempt at organizing and making sure that the best aspects of ourselves come out, right? Instead of the animal aspects of ourselves, right?
Okay. So
it's an attempt. And those templates work up to a certain point, right? But there's something greater in us. This is the beauty of being a human, is that we always are searching for something more. There is something inside of us that has this need to evolve, right? Not just biologically, but emotionally, quote unquote, spiritually, right? There is that need to want more, right? So a lot of people, and you heard this before, they get trapped into the things that they own to give them a definition as to who they are. And what it does, right, when you follow the template and you are, quote unquote, a success in the view of what we have determined success is, right?
Societal view,
right? It does give you a sense of belonging, right? Let's not kid ourselves for that, right? When you walk into a room and people, hey, how you doing? That's that sense of belonging, right? When people say, wow, look at that person, they're a lawyer, they're a doctor, it gives you that sense of belonging, right? That sense of I'm important, I'm somebody, right? Again, nothing wrong with that. I'm not condemning it nor condoning it. It is what it is, and he has his point, because one of our needs is that sense of belonging. However, your soul wants more. The soul wants to go back. It's like Neo needs to go back to the source. Like your soul wants to go back to the source to evolve individually and also impact the collective evolution to get to experience different ways of life, right? And that's kind of like what we feel, that tension, that disorientation that you feel, even when you're a success, even when you've done, even when you follow the blueprint, right? What you see happening a lot of the time is you follow the blueprint, you get there, but for some reason, it's never enough, right? It's never enough. So then that's the question. The question is like, what am I really searching? What am I really looking for? Right? That's why but I've been finding that question, what's your why, somewhat problematic, right? Because if your why is to have a sense of belonging, right? Or to prove to someone that you're worthy, and you spend all your life, which is what I did.
Right.
Really what I did. Right? Then you arrive at a point in which it's like, it's empty. Someone somewhere is not going to find you good enough, regardless of the accolades. Somebody's going to be able to criticize you. Is going to say this, you're doing this wrong, blah 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 blah. There's always going to be that. So then, if my why was just to belong, but it doesn't matter what I do, then I'm just going to continue and live my life to prove to somebody that I'm worthy, right? That disorientation that you get there, and then I see it with teens, right? So I work with teens and young people. They all want to be their own selves, right? Yeah. But when you look around the school, they all look the same. They all dress the same. They're all wearing the same Jordans, different little colors, right? Like it's just all that stuff that we do to belong. But once we feel that misalignment, right? Then nothing outside makes us feel whole. That's really sacred.
Well, I think what happens in those moments, I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm trying to figure out, like, identify that space where you feel that misalignment, right? Where you feel like, wow, this is like being at a job and you've done so well, and then not being rewarded for that, right? In whatever way, shape, or form, a raise or whatever. And then saying, okay, what is this? Instead of, I don't know how I'm saying this, but I'm trying to make it where it's like, because I think a lot of people, what happens is they experience this and then they search for other things to do to fill that gap.
Yes.
In other words, they say, you know what, let me go get my, let me get a certificate. Maybe this will help me in my job, and I may get a raise, or I might get that title or whatnot, whatever it is. Right. Yeah. And I think what happens is people start, when they get this calling or that misalignment or that feeling inside that something's not right and something's not lining up, they're looking for other things to follow to follow that template, to continue to fill that template, because that's all they've ever known.
Yes.
So the question because I'm leading to a question, is when people start to feel that, and just bear with me because I'm still going through all this. So it's like a real touchy kind of sensitive thing for me.
I get it.
Because I did this. I've tried to keep following the template. Let me do this then. Let me look for another job. Let me do this. Let me go somewhere where I will be accepted or rewarded, or people say, wow, she worked so hard. She has a terminal degree and she deserves this job. And I think for me, it's not any different than from other people. I looked for a job for a long time before I was able to get something else. Right. Yep. But again, I was following a template. So the question is, when people feel this sense of the loss, or that feeling of misalignment, or feeling of, this doesn't feel good anymore, like something's not right, rather than blaming, how do we take accountability for that? And then move in a direction that feels really scary, or just very uncertain, or you're just not familiar with it, because that's what we're trying to put out there. This is a feeling that is unfamiliar. It doesn't feel good. You don't know what to do with it. You're scared to death. You're like, what the fuck, Yeah. And I want to be able to give people that source, or that resource to turn to, because that that in and of itself is so overwhelming. Like I feel emotional just talking about it because it's so overwhelming and hard.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, it's a very, very internal existential point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When you're looking at what has worked for many people, right, and what our society encourages for us to do, right, and you followed it, and it gave you the home, and it gave you the family, and it gave you all those things, right? It gave you somewhat of a status, so some way for you to be free, right? But there's still that void, right? That not a sense of failure, but a discomfort that something's not enough, right? That it's just not enough. It's just not enough, right? Nothing that you do is ever good enough, right? Nothing. I want more to be recognized. I want that recognition. I want that the money. I want that. I want to be somebody, right? But even when I've done all this, I still feel empty, right? And what that is really, it's the question that I will ask you. I will start with this one question. It's a complicated question. What's the point of life? So if the point of life, it's not an easy question, right? If the point of life is to fill the function in society, to raise kids so that we could continue the species, to what end? Right? It's a very important question to ask, because if life is primarily about functions and the roles that we play within an artificial idea, society is an idea of organizing us so that so the best parts of us come up, right? But yet it doesn't feel in alignment. It doesn't feel that you belong, right? That's something to question. Ask that question. What is the point of life anyways? Right? It's a very scary question to ask, because the first conclusion that you will draw is like, this shit makes no sense. So why should I even be trying? And that brings into depression, right? Because it's like, wow, there's nothing, right? Or you could explore what that looks like. What have other people thought about? What have other people done, right? And I call that like the spectrum of choice, right? Because, and I love philosophies, because everybody thinks that you gotta pick one philosophy, like one religion, and then that's it, right? But I like the spectrum, because the spectrum shows you that depending upon how you perceive the world and how much you question, or how close you question, right? Because one of the things that we talked about is that universal perspective, right? Looking at things more further than what your immediacy things are.
Yeah.
When you start looking at life from that broader point of view, you begin to understand, now, wait a minute, I'm not just bound by this. No one is bound by this. There is no ideology that is better than the other. It's just a perception on how we should live. Right?
Yeah.
And organizing ourselves to the best case scenario. But where are we heading? Like, where are we heading, right? So the beautiful thing about exploring life is that one of the common things about life, one of the most important things, is this idea of, number one, preserving, right, the different species, but also the evolution of those species, right? And I personally feel, when you feel that discomfort, it is an invitation for you to evolve, for you to find within you, right, a different way of living, which consequently, in fact, affects everybody else around you.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be something, because we're always looking for the home runs, right?
Yeah.
It could be something simple as, oh, I like doing this. Let me investigate it. Maybe I could do this. And then people see that. It's like, wow, Jessie did this. Maybe I could do it. Right? So you start these points of conflict are opportunities to deviate.
Right. There are opportunities for growth.
For growth.
For me, that's because I look at myself right this minute, right now, as we're recording this episode, and I look at myself, 5 months ago, 6 months ago, maybe even less, maybe 4 months ago. And I was just like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
What am I doing? You know what I mean? And knowing that there's more out there for me meant, in my case, because this is a personal journey, meant really looking at the behaviors that I have been depositing into my life, the things that I have been doing to maintain. And while everything was like, the duck analogy, you look really calm on the top, at the bottom, I was like, going crazy, because I was like, something is not right. You know what I mean? And I remember thinking, why am I feeling this feeling? Am I going through menopause? Because I'm like, why? I'm feeling I feel like crying. I feel like this. And, and it was really like the minute that I accepted, okay, I can't stay here anymore because I'm suffocating. Yeah. I'm like literally suffocating myself.
Yes.
I realized that I had to just be like the bird, open that door and then just walk out and just be and fly, right?
But here's the thing, right? Here's one of the things that are very challenging when you're confronting that question, right? It's kind of like that idea, is the grass greener on the other side, right?
It's not.
No,
in some cases.
That's the big question,
yeah,
right?
It is.
The question is, if I leave the life that I'm living right now because I have this angst that there's something more, right? I don't know what it's going to happen, but here I'm secure.
Yeah.
Right? It gives you a sense of security to not step out into something new. I mean, this is not a judgment. This is something that we have to be cognizant and be patient with us understanding that reality. The reality is that if you are comfortable and you live a life that, I mean, we live in the States, right? Our lifestyle in comparison to most countries in the world is unparalleled, right? But yet we feel all this angst and all this turmoil individually and collectively, right? But why? Because the fear of something new is so much more. It's very, very scary.
It is
because
scary.
You're stepping out into the unknown. But the question really arises, right? Where would our species will be if some of us didn't answer the call for there's got to be something more than this? If we all just stayed in our comfortable, because again, we've got here as human beings not because we stayed at comfortable places. It's because some of us, and I say us, I mean not necessarily me, but people that came before us
answered the call. They
answered the call to say there's got to be something more than this, and took action to it.
Right. That's tons of people. From Einstein to all flying the airplane. Imagine that never happened.
From the moment that we became conscious of things that we could do, we began to evolve. And some people did stay behind. Some people moved forward, and then those people, okay, well, it's safe for that dude to do it, so let me follow along. And then we kept going and going all the way to here, right? So that call, but again, we limit ourselves by the functions that we play within a certain society.
Yeah.
Because it's safe. So when this call, and it doesn't happen to everybody. It really doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
Right? There's people that are more than content and happy and fulfilled playing their role.
Yeah.
Right? There are some people that love their role so much, right? Or their idea so much that they're willing to die for it.
Absolutely.
Right? And they're willing to kill for it.
That too.
Right?
Yeah.
They're willing to demonize another human being because of it. Right? That's why you have classism. That's why you have racism. That's why you have any type of ism, because the unwillingness to answer the call to something greater, or feeling so comfortable then if somebody feels that, it's like, what's wrong with you? You need some meds.
Yeah, it's true.
You know?
It's true, because I know, and that's really impactful what you just said, because I think that's a whole nother issue, because as I think about the choices that I'm making currently in my life right now, and how this is going to unfold, and how it's going to look for other people, I could easily go, you know what? No, I'm good. Let me just wipe my hands from that. I'm just gonna keep doing what I was doing.
Grin and bear it.
Right. But the feeling is so strong that it's like we were saying, I can read something or watch a movie or see something on the street and just come to be moved to tears
by it,
because it's a heightened type of feeling right now for me, that I just can't do it anymore.
And there are people on the other end. What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, of course.
Right? Because again, it's
what you just said. And I don't mean it as a negative to everybody, because for some people they don't feel this way.
No,
they're content where they're at. I've known people who have been in their jobs or in their roles for 40, 42 years, 45 years, and I've been like, damn. You're going to retire? And they're like, I'm afraid if I retire, what am I going to do with myself?
Yeah.
So I'll just stay here. And I'm just like, damn.
And again,
their whole identity is mixed up in this thing.
Yeah. And the thing is, I don't know where this came from, but I remember it. It's not on my own. It's like the fortresses and the things that we build around us become our own prisons. Right? Yeah, because for most of our lives as the human species, we were nomads. We went where the food was. We moved around. We explored. We tried different things, even when it was challenging. But the thing about comfort and the thing about this right here, right, is that, again, I'm not trying to condemn, no condone these behaviors, but what happens to us, our human being, is that we become oppressors of one another because we want to maintain a certain idea of what our status is, our sense of belonging. The more money I have, the more status I have, the more people will look at me. The more attention I get, the much better that I will feel, because I'm that sense of being, people are doing that. But all that stuff is external, right? All that stuff comes and goes. People could change their minds right away about you. Situations can change. Markets switch. And all these things switch. So our identity is so intertwined, so delicately, right? With the social and economical systems that we live in, right? But then, again, go back to the question, what is life? And life is like a theater. It's like, how do we really fit in? What role do we play? Do we play based on what you just said, what other people might think of us? Because we don't want to be the person outside of the tribe.
Right.
That's a very real thing, right? To be outside of the tribe, to be the outcast of the tribe.
Yeah.
That's a real thing, because to be that person means loneliness.
It's choosing loneliness, yeah.
But it's choosing it, but if you're put into it right there too, if you're placed into that, it's also a very dramatic place.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, it is. I think that you're right. Sometimes it's not your choice. It's just that you're, like you said, it's like being condemned by other people, because you're acting on something that that you need to do for your own well-being, for your life.
Now, this is what's going to get where it gets very interesting, right? And I'm kind of like looking at some of our notes over here, which is kind of do you know what nirvana is?
I mean, I think I do.
Like, what do you think it is?
Nirvana, like the end all be all best thing in the whole world. Right. Pure ecstasy, maybe, or I don't know. Yeah.
So this is why I quote things now. Like I didn't quote the phrase, but it's kind of, I'm beginning to understand the combination of the psycho-spiritual realms, right? Like how those two things come around, right? So according to Joseph Campbell, one of the things on nirvana is a place in which you are not affected by desires or fears, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you look at life, right, our desire to belong, our desire for self-preservation within a social structure, right, will bring about fears that we're not able to deal with. So this could be a certain fear. We want to do all this stuff extra and follow the road map because our fear of not belonging.
Right. So you're
for self-preservation, because it is much easier to survive within the masses than it is to survive by yourself. So nirvana is a place in which you're not affected by those two things, right? And it's a place in which you are able to explore, right, the future and explore life, or experience life, not explore it, but experience life without the fear of outcome. Right. That's why when you read all these different texts, like the Bhagavad Gita, the story of Christ, is like Christ. You know, you're looking at life from a standpoint, from a perspective that is about experiencing and evolving with it. Right.
So can you?
But that's fearful.
Yeah, yeah. So can you just put that into like a practical? For me, just because it's, I understand what you're saying, but what is that like? Practically, like, I mean, I know you're being practical, but what does that look like? What is that?
So like, for instance, for me right now, this is kind of like what I'm working through.
Okay.
What I'm working through, it's that the conflict that's within me.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
The child, the adult, and the parent, right? From Thomas Harris and the I'm okay, you're okay, transactional analysis, right? So
the book.
Yeah. My parent is very strong.
Okay.
It's like it's that thing that says like, what are you doing? You know, this is crazy. This is stupid. You know, you shouldn't be thinking like this. You got to watch out for this. You got to watch out for that. If you step outside of the, so it's that editor, that devil in our mind, because all these things are all metaphoricals and analogies to make sense of concepts, right? Because sometimes words are limited. So it's much easier to picture a devil telling you and telling you, no, if you do this, or an angel on the other side telling you these two things, right? But one of them will tell you, push forward or move back, depending upon what it is. So it's like understanding like the voices and understanding that your emotions are the ones that are talking to you, right? So for me right now, one of the things that I want to focus on is this idea of walking through my life as I arrive now without fear of the outcome. Right? Like, how do I live? This is what I'm working. Well, how do I take a step every day without fear, without the tension inside, right? Without that concern and that, what's going to happen if I take this step? Without that fear, and instead taking an action, a pointed action each day, right? With the psycho-spiritual focus on letting go, or just taking in the moment, right? Like living in the here and the now.
Yeah.
To arrive at a place like that, it requires discipline. To me, it's been very challenging, right?
It is. I think it's challenging for everybody. I think it's how do you get yourself into that mindset of, I'm not going to think about what will come from this. I'm just going to take this action.
Yeah.
And be present and be joyful in that moment, because it's hard to have those feelings and also not focus on the end result or the consequence. Not consequence, because it's consequences.
No. Consequences. Anything that you do has consequences.
Exactly.
Both good or bad.
Good or bad, right. So it's really thinking out of that, like, that's a hard thing to do.
Because it involves really, truly experiencing your internal world. Right?
Being connected with yourself.
Because listening to yourself, right, is for crazy people, right? That's kind of like, crazy people talk to themselves, right? Because we primarily always are thinking logically. And most of us don't realize that a lot of our logic is really infused by our desires, right? Our impulses, and our emotions, right? So like all that stuff, you can't really compartmentalize all these different things, right? If you're too logical, then you become too robotic and too cold, so things don't feel the same. If you're too free willy-nilly, too spiritual, right, then nothing matters, so you just whatever, things just go, right? So it requires a discipline to understand first and foremost who you are. Like, who are you really, right? Like, and that's another question for another time, right? Like, it requires that, a very deep sense of who you are. And that journey in and of itself is hard, because when you're right at the realization of what that is, it's crazy, right? But then it's like, okay, well, how do I live from here? How do I create? How do I contribute to the evolution of everything around me? Because I don't believe personally in just escaping. You have to be able to do something with it. And I know what it is for me, which is this, right? And I create plans. I create an outline of it all. I'm using my faculties of thinking to create an outline of what I want, what we want this to look like, and what are the steps that we need to take, right? But what I've noticed about myself is, like, when I say those steps, there's a real tension that goes with that, right? So, and that right there is what I have to transform. And that takes
the tension of the pressures of the outcomes,
the pressures of the outcomes and the fears.
Okay, so that's what I'm trying to get. Okay, so that's good. I'm
so
glad
the
you said that.
idea with that is to really be disciplined as to number one.
But that takes a level of knowing yourself,
of course,
or at least having the presence of mind to say, "Well, there's that. Okay, there it is. This is the feeling," and taking that time to now describe that feeling, because that's where I'm at. That's where I'm trying to get to connect with you on that, because I'm not as far into this whole thing, because, you know, you kind of have made this shift and you went through this process long before I did, right? But I know for me, it's, that's that feeling right there. It does not feel good. Makes me arch my back. It makes me do weird things. And that's the feeling that I try to describe and associate it with whatever it is that's happening. Like, we went to the beach yesterday together, right? And I was struggling to sit in this chair and, playing it off like it's the sun or whatever. But I was struggling because I was like, I'm just sitting here. I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting here. I'm just at the beach.
Nothing is progressing. Nothing is, I'm taking my time to enjoy this moment.
Right. And I was like, what am I feeling? And I wrote it in I did my little Apple, journal thing that you can do. And I wrote in there that this is how I'm feeling. And that helped me, because I was like, okay, I'm feeling anxious. I can't stay still. I'm feeling like fatigue in my neck. Blah,
You're
blah.
naming it.
Which is, I'm putting a name to these feelings. And so I went to the water, and I literally, this was what I did, but I just went in there and I was like, okay. And I just envisioned all those things that I just finished saying just coming off of me into the water.
Yeah. So what you used, right, is from esoteric point of view, is the principle of polarity, right? It's like you're feeling something in one way. What is the opposite feeling of it, right? And so that's what you did. You acknowledged what you were feeling. You recognized it. You named it. You felt it, right? But then you say, okay, I'm going to take an action to change this feeling into what I want to feel. Right? In this particular moment. Right? So that's how you use that, right? And
allow myself to stay doing what I was doing, which was trying to relax on the beach and enjoy myself, get a little suntan.
Enjoy the moment, right? So, like, for instance, for me, because it happens internal, and I have this vivid voice of my child, right? Like my parent, like this very demanding, and that voice stems from my life experiences, the things that happen, that all sense of wanting to belong and doing all this stuff, all these things to make me feel safe. And that realizing that voice and that thing that's internal inside of you, I think that's the first step of opening the door to actually deal with this. Because what I've realized, is talking from my point of view, is that a lot of the things that I did, even when I followed the program, was because I wanted a sense to belong. right? And I talked about this before. I wanted to belong. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to be recognized. So I did a lot of things, but from that point of view, and although I knew my heart and I know what I was doing, as a subtext of that was this the idea of belonging, of feeling good enough about, who I am, like the issues with self-esteem, all this stuff was and the actions that I took from that point, even to the point where I allow myself to stay in situations that were not beneficial for me because of the fear of like, if I leave this, what am I going to do with myself?
Yeah.
So I did stay in places too long. I did those type of things.
You resisted
because the voice inside of me told me like, this is safer than what's out there.
Yeah.
A lot safer than what's out there.
Yeah.
And that sometimes holds you back, right?
Yes.
So now, as you ask this question, okay, now that I'm feeling this turmoil, everything seems to work, but there's that voice inside, is listen to it calmly and lovingly. And ask it, what is it that you're trying to tell me? What are you trying to tell me? Okay.
Instead of diminishing
instead of suppressing it.
Invite it to interact with you.
Yes.
Is what you're saying.
Because when you suppress it, it's going to come out somewhere.
Eventually. That's what I was just saying.
This is
how we started this episode.
Yeah, this is what happens to a lot of men, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of men, what we do traditionally is that we suppress everything until we don't. And when that comes out, watch out.
Yeah.
Typically, it comes out with frustration, anger, and we take it out on the people that are closest to us, right? So the idea behind feeling that tension, that in between, it's that idea of allowing yourself to be open for the possibility of what's next,
right,
or what could be, right?
Yeah.
To look at life more from a standpoint of curiosity, right, and wonder, rather than stagnation or fear,
right.
And
asking that question in this exercise or in this process, right, of what would my life look like if I didn't have these constraints and these things to keep you from moving forward, right?
That's a good question.
Because that's one thing that you've been telling me lately is, just think about what it would look like for you to just be here, or just what does it look like for you to just relax, you know? And it's hard to do that because you think that you don't deserve it. You think that it's being lazy. You think that
take time, you're not working hard enough, you're not hustling enough,
right.
You're not doing this enough.
Right. And I often find you say that, you're like, I didn't do enough, I haven't done enough and stuff. And that's that voice coming out that we feel comfortable with each other saying that. But I think that that's a really good place to also start, or something to implement in this growth process.
And listen, I'm not advocating an absence of responsibility for maintaining a certain lifestyle that you choose, right? But there comes a point in which the lifestyle becomes the why rather than what's inside. What I mean by that, we just watched this movie a couple of weeks ago about the Gettys, right? The kidnapped the grandson, and there was a part between two actors, and he says, how much is enough money for you? Nothing.
Yeah.
It's never enough. I want more and more and more of that, right? Because what it does, that becomes your why now. Not because of the lifestyle, because it gives you that sense of purpose that even your grandson, the person that you loved, and the money that they're asking for, you could actually do that like in 10 minutes, and you say, nope. Right? It's just like things like that the Define does. And what it does is that it reverts us to what I call sophisticated animals. It reverts us back to that instead of looking forward to create, to move, to take our individual actions and our point of expression to actually help evolve everything around us, right? It was interesting because in my own personal life, I've always been criticized about being sensitive or too nice or things of that nature, right? And I never looked at those things as good things, right? Because I'm a Hispanic man, so I'm supposed to be, whatever, right? But the reality is that life made me this way for me to be able to go and explore this aspect, because that's my individual point of expression, to learn this stuff, to be able to share it. Now, I can't play baseball, like a lot of my great Dominican people can, or I'm not a singer. I could cook a little bit, right?
A little bit,
right?
I'm looking forward to some chicken wings today. What are you talking about?
Right. So, and again, it's like I play a somewhat outside of the norm type of role, right? Because I work with youth and I did all that stuff, and primarily because I was heavily influenced by Ken and the things that he did with us in youth, and so all those things kind of like allow me to be here. But one thing that I'm thankful for is that I knew that when that friction came in the past, when I answered it, it was very erratic, very emotional.
Yeah.
Right. I think now as I'm matured, as I've been into a few evolutions of life, this situation now that we're transforming into something new, I have more equanimity. And now that, like you said, now I'm able to look at that voice, not with condemnation and telling it to be quiet or taking meds to quiet it down, right? But actually letting her know, hey, you brought me here. I get it where you're concerned, but let's go and explore and find out what happens. Let's see where this takes us. The worst that could happen, the very worst that could happen, is that we will die. And that is inevitable, So other than that, you could lose everything and you could stand up again, right? You probably might get mocked a little bit by society and people around you, but that's okay. You're not the only one. You're not the first one, and you're not the last one that society will laugh at for being stupid or being reckless or being foolish or whatever they want to call it, right? Or the idea is, okay, what is life, right? And if society has everything so well together, why are people going through all the stuff that they're going through?
That's a great question.
I'm just saying.
Great question.
So either way, my suggestion for people going through that friction, right? That idea of that I'll build this life, but man, I'm miserable. I don't understand it. It's like, challenge that. It's a call for you. It's a sacred calling to get to know who you really are, right? I can't tell you what that is. You got to find that stuff on your own.
Yeah.
But then also to be able to create something different.
Yeah. So the first step is to accept the invitation.
Accept the invitation, right? Go into it. Confront it rather than running away. Yeah. It feels like it's painful. I'm not going to lie to you. It's painful. It's disorienting. It's all that.
It is.
But it's like a muscle. Your soul is like a muscle, and we don't really use it. That's why it's so difficult for us to actually investigate it. We look for the quick fix. We go to church, we listen to the sermon, we feel good, but then Sunday, the case of the Sundays comes up.
Yeah.
Right? Mondays you hate. Well, you get, thank God it's Friday. My God, thankful that we got a 4-day weekend. And then your weekend goes and it's like, I gotta go back to this. Right? But if we see all this, why are we maintaining it? And particularly, again, not everybody gets this call.
Right.
Everybody a lot of people, and I don't know the numbers, I don't have the statistics. People are fine being hedonistic, right? Which is like the seeking of pleasure. Okay, it's in the spectrum of choice. That's a reality. There's other people on the other side that are looking for power, to have power. Again, that's an aspect of choice. There's people that are looking to be stoic, that nothing affects them. They're just living. They just accept things as they are, and they just keep going, right? There are people that are like the Buddhists. They go out and they're going to separate themselves from the world, and they're going to just meditate and be one with Brahman and the universe and everything, right? And then what we're suggesting is active participation in it. It's understanding that those things are all situational, because I like pleasure just like the next guy, but living from pleasure constantly, it's not a good idea, in my opinion. Same thing with being stoic all the time. It's not always a good idea to always be the same, right? So, because you have to have fun too, you know. But so what we're suggesting here in the Soul's Quest is active participation in what we do. Explore who you are, look into those things, and create from there.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us on the ASQ podcast. If today's episode spoke to your season of reinvention, start your quest with personal reflections, ground wisdom, and practical action. And don't forget, our upcoming book, A Soul's Quest, A Transformational Approach to Life. Remember, find meaning, navigate change, live and lead fully. Bye.